Hello, my name is Alexander, and today I'm going to be discussing Marsha P. Johnson, who was a black queer icon in the 60s and the 70s. Johnson was born Malcolm Michaels Jr. in Elizabeth, New Jersey in 1945. Johnson's upbringing was tough. At the age of 5, she started wearing dresses but was bullied by the boys who lived around her neighborhood. Johnson was also a victim of rape at the young age of 13. Even though Johnson's early childhood years were tough, Johnson graduated in 1963 from Edison High School and then moved to New York with nearly nothing to her name. Johnson states that her life changed after moving to New York and being able to come out. When it comes to Johnson's identity, Johnson first used Black Marisha as her name, but then later took on Marsha P. Johnson, for Marsha Pay No Mind. And Johnson stands for the restaurant that's Howard's Johnson on 42nd Street. Johnson identified between many different identities. She did not stick to any specific label. This is now considered to be a person who is gender nonconforming. Throughout her life, Johnson participated in many different types of activisms. Johnson is known to be a part of the Stonewall riots, which were a series of violent confrontations between the police and gay rights activists in the year of 1969. On June 28, 1969, police officers entered the Stonewall Inn, arrested employees, and roughed up customers, which later resulted in clearing up the bar. In addition, they were able to stop anybody that wasn't wearing at least 3 articles of their gender-appropriate clothing. This later resulted in multiple riots. Johnson is said to have climbed a lamppost and dropped a bag with bricks down on a police car, which shattered the windshield. The Stonewall incident was perhaps the first time the LGBT+ community saw the value of uniting behind a common cause and became a symbol of resistance to social and political discrimination. One of the biggest impacts that Johnson must have had on the queer community must be the organization that she co-founded with Sylvia Rivera called STAR. STAR was a gay, gender nonconforming, and trans street activist organization. Together, they both became visible presence at gay liberation marches and other radical political actions. STAR's goal was to provide housing and support to homeless LGBT youth and sex workers in Lower Manhattan. Rivera and Johnson both became known as the mothers of the household. Together with the Gay Liberation Front, STAR hosted a fundraising event in which later resulted in the funds for them to purchase a STAR house. They found a 4-bedroom apartment in rundown building East Village, New York, with no electricity or heat, but then they later began to repair it. The actions seen by both Rivera and Johnson can be seen as groundbreaking organizations in the queer liberation movement and a model for other organizations. One of Johnson's last acts of activism was throughout the AIDS epidemic. Johnson moved in with a friend, Randy Wicker, between 1980 and 1992. Wicker invited her to stay one night, and Marsha never left afterwards. Johnson became Wicker's carer when his lover, David, fell terminally ill with AIDS. During the AIDS pandemic, Johnson grew committed to staying with the sick and dying and undertaking street campaigns with AIDS activist groups such as ACT UP. In 1980, Johnson can be seen with members of the Gay Men's Health Crisis at memorial services and actions for those who have died of AIDS. When it comes to Johnson's death, it came to be a controversy within the community. Marsha's body was found floating in the Hudson River in 1992. At first, the police ruled her death suicide, but the community insisted that it wasn't suicide. When the authorities took her out of the water, people stated that she had a large wound on her head. Johnson's strange death came at a time in New York City when anti-LGBT violence, including prejudiced police criminality, was at an all-time high. But we still don't have a definitive answer as to what happened during her death. Even though Johnson was an activist in the 60s and the 70s, we can still see her being a symbol in today's society. One of the biggest problems that the LGBT community is facing throughout these times is Black trans women being attacked. Black trans women have been and keep being the most significant group targeted within the LGBT community. At least 50 trans and non-gender conforming people were fatally shot or killed by other violent means this year alone, being 2021. According to the report by the Human Rights Campaign, this has been the highest rate of deaths since 2013. With Johnson's death becoming a cold case, a lot of people in the community have put her as a symbol for those who have been attacked and their cases have gone cold. Her presence keeps the conversation going to make sure we find those responsible for these crimes. The media has become a great place for us to show our appreciation for activists like Marsha. For example, in the 2021 Met Gala, Nikki Tutorials, a trans YouTube makeup artist, paid tribute to Marsha. She highlighted Marsha by representing her through the theme of In America, a Lexicon of Fashion, bringing the conversation of how much impact Marsha had on American LGBT history. On one side of the ribbon, you can see it says, "Pay it no mind," which is what Marsha stood for. As I finished my research about Marsha P. Johnson, I found myself learning that as a person who is a part of the LGBT community, we should know our history and who we're fighting for our rights, because they didn't come easily to us. In addition, the biggest takeaway I'm taking from this is to help all of our marginalized groups within our community, because just because one group of people got their rights doesn't mean we should stop fighting for the others. What we want is for all of us to have our rights.